Hi, Jacqueline here from the Empower and Thrive Hub. Thank you for joining me. Happy Sunday to everybody. Thank you to all new subscribers and viewers. Thank you for all your likes and comments. I'd like to talk about the housing policy, the housing crisis. I'm not going to go very deep into it. However, I am going to touch some certain criteria that allow immigrants, or how immigrants are actually perhaps housed or not housed when they enter the United Kingdom. One of the things, there's a huge misunderstanding going on and has gone on for years and is still ongoing. There's been some comments left on a previous video, and I'd just like to address one or two things with regards to housing, because some of the British people believe that immigrants have priority in housing, and that's why there's a housing crisis. This is not necessarily true in its entirety. Now, when an immigrant asylum seeker arrives in the United Kingdom, generally they have been arriving without status. That is, if they arrived as a stowaway or at the unconditional way, such as by plane, and they had their papers. So if they arrive in the United Kingdom through borders and through small boats, as the United Kingdom government calls them, then generally they do not have a status in the United Kingdom. What happens to an asylum seeker that arrives within the United Kingdom is that they may, on humanitarian grounds, be placed in housing. And those housing, when I say housing, those are overcrowded conditions. These are places where even generally speaking, are not humane. They may be able to put their head down and rest, but it is not like a house. It's not like a flat or anything like that. Now we hear of asylum seekers being put in hotel rooms, and they're overcrowded generally. You might not find one person in a hotel room that's very small. You might find several. You might find a big family in a hotel room, for instance. Yes, and somebody will say it's the taxpayer paying for it. True, the taxpayer is paying for it. But guess what? There is also a trend that immigrants and asylum seekers that are placed in that way may not necessarily stay there for long, and they may find their feet. And they may find their feet after quite a while. Once their stay is established, they choose not to remain in overcrowded conditions. And there is published data that shows that a lot of immigrants that have stayed in the United Kingdom for long are actually staying in their own private arranged accommodation. Either they're renting, privately, or they own their own homes. These are people, immigrants who have worked for some time, they have saved money, and they've gone on to be property owners. They've gone on to be landlords even, and maybe bought second properties. So that's what's happening. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the majority of immigrants that arrive in the United Kingdom in the last several years are arriving on visas that are no recourse to public funds. This means that they cannot get benefits, they cannot get housing, and they can't get any other related benefit or scheme such as housing, such as the British citizen person or a British person may get. That means they avoid, and they are no longer in that system at all. And they have to find their own means of actually finding ways of actually housing themselves. So anytime anger is brought upon the housing crisis, we have to remember some of the facts as well. The other thing with the housing is that any person, and the majority of councils have a policy as to who they prioritize in their housing. Any person that is housed in a particular borough or is living in a particular council should have lived in that council. There will be a requirement for them perhaps to live in a specific borough for a certain amount of time. And what's that certain amount of time? I can't say. Every borough or council or housing unit has its requirements. One has got to actually check that out. So how does somebody that's an asylum seeker or an immigrant that came a year or 2 years, 6 months, and has been living, let's say in, I don't know, give an example, in Ealing Council, Hackney or wherever, for 6 months, how does that person qualify for housing? They don't qualify. Chances are that they're living in a place that is very overcrowded. They choose not to live there. They are there because their case is being processed as an asylum seeker. So the other thing that we need to actually remember is that a lot of home ownership schemes that we have now have enabled and may allow, some of the immigrants to actually buy their own homes. So let's say an immigrant comes to United Kingdom as a nurse and they've got a job. They come to United Kingdom as a doctor, and they come to United Kingdom as a carer for that matter. And perhaps, and I'm not saying that the carer salary is immediately possible for them to actually buy a property. No, I'm saying that let's say those groups of people come and they can go on the the scheme, what the government gives towards a deposit to buy a house, the contribution that the government gives, and they have a saving. Perhaps they can purchase a property and live in it. Some immigrants actually, contrary to popular belief, come to the United Kingdom with some sums of money that they may be able to actually purchase a small place, or even a bigger place, depending on how their income is. So it's a bigger picture than what people are actually painting it to be. There is more detailed information to look into before we make judgments, and before we say immigrants are coming to take our housing, and perhaps us as or perhaps should I say you, if you're watching and you're a British person and you think that maybe immigrants have come to to take your housing, and therefore that is the reason why you're not housed. That is not necessarily true. There is a whole set of criteria, quite a lot of factors to actually take into account before somebody can actually say this is what is happening. There's information out there, and it needs to be looked at, it needs to be read, and we will actually find that the picture is not quite clear cut as we might be assuming. United Kingdom, granted, is a small island. It is a small country. London itself is overcrowded, granted. Housing landlords are taking advantage. Yes, they are, because the rents are really quite high, and one could rent a really small room for as much as £1,000 plus depending on the London area. So it is understandable, and a lot of immigrants are going through so much, renting places that are so expensive in comparison to their income, such that it barely leaves them enough income to save or to even do any other things. So before we get extremely angry, once again, I'd like to open the forum. I'd like to open this page, and allow people to have a civil conversation, so that we can actually talk about these matters. And once again, thank you so much for watching. If you've watched the video up to the end, I appreciate you all. And until next time, God bless you.